Hello, my name is Sunny and welcome to yet another market update. And this time I will be talking about cryptocurrency specifically. Is the cycle different? Is the cycle over or can we still expect some performance? I will give you a detailed overview of what my expectations are right now compared to my last video. So let's head straight in. I'm going to launch a new format which is called Profit Pulse. And in Profit Pulse, I'm going to try and give you guys some more regular market updates from time to time, just what I am doing, what I'm seeing. So stay tuned and subscribe to my channels, YouTube or X, if you want to see more of that in the future. So let's dive straight into it. Let's take a look at cryptocurrency, what we can expect, what I'm seeing. Let me just make myself a little bit smaller here. So yeah, let's take a look at where we are right now. First, we see Bitcoin, and this is a manually drawn logarithmic regression, which is basically a more realistic view of how cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin are getting adopted, which is not the same as the rainbow chart, which is widely known. This is a custom made one. And as you can see, in every Bitcoin cycle, when we have the halving, then shortly after, roughly between 17 to 18 months later, we see a cyclical peak. We haven't seen a peak just yet. We still have time until roughly November of this year, until the regular 4-year cycle comes to an end. So regarding the usual cycles, we are still spot on. Now, another thing where I like to look at is the strengths. I like to look at RSI, and we can clearly see that every cycle we see one or two peaks occurring, which basically points to a market which is a seller's market, the end of the cycle, rather said. So we saw a double peak in 2013, then we saw another double peak in 2017, with the second peak being slightly higher, which was the exact monthly candle top. We even saw a peak in 2021, but we know that we had a second high, which was basically a Wyckoff distribution, and that second high was slightly higher than the first one. Overall, if we took the signal, we sold at the first high, we would have sold pretty solid, a couple of $1,000 max. But you would have gotten the signal once again. And what we see right now is, yeah, we have been oversold, which means we have been above 70%. But we did not see a big spike. And that is one indication that this cycle is not over just yet. We have not seen a massive overbought environment, big hype for Bitcoin just yet. But there is one reason of concern nonetheless. Every price cycle, we have a clear trend in the RSI, and whenever we break it, as you can see in 2013, then we have the bear cycle. And we did the same in 2017. And once we broke that upward cycle, you can basically confirm a bear market. And the same in the cycle of 21, which was basically the same trend. And then we entered into a bear market. And we are basically seeing the same signal right now. We have not seen a overheated market at all compared to previous cycles, but we have seen a break. Now, there are two ways to look at it. First being that, yes, this was the high and we are likely entering a bear market. We could see a similar situation like in 2021, second high, slightly higher, and then roll over. That's one way you can look at it, and it's a popular view right now in the markets. I believe that is wrong. I do believe that the break of trend is a weakening signal overall, so I do think it's not the best to see, but I do think it's logic because there is a lot less hype. People know cryptocurrency much more. There's a lot more competition. This cycle, generally in the global markets, liquidity has been limited. We have seen quantitative tightening. So the momentum is not that awesome as it was in prior cycles. It's a lot more of a difficult market, which basically means that overbought conditions are harder to really get into that very explosive momentum. And I still think that even though that we broke the trend, that we will see a significant high as in prior cycles, higher than what we have seen, at least higher than 80%. And that is basically where I'm looking for a real bear market if that occurs. So for now, I do not believe this is it. I do believe that this time is different for RSI because there is just less momentum because of the wars, because of the tensions, because of tariffs. There's a lot of headwind in crypto. As the asset is getting bigger, it's also more difficult to pump price. It's only logical that we are going to break some historic patterns. But there is more. We always have to stack and see, yeah, do we get confluence? Is the 50-50 or not? So let's take a look at the total 3 charts. This is basically altcoins without Ethereum and Bitcoin. And if you see logarithmic growth curve, we are still far away from what is possible. We could see a 2x at the very least, taking us all the way up until roughly 1.8 trillion market cap. And if you look at altcoins, then you can clearly see that altcoins are still in that range. They are still healthy. They are at the bottom of the range. So they are still a buy. And if you look at them cyclically, this is a weekly chart, by the way, then yeah, they still have room to run. And you can also see like in 2024 at like roughly March, we did see a high, but generally altcoins did not see massive performance. We just rallied from the lows. So I do not think that is a cyclical ending target because as you can see, afterwards, altcoins moved almost to the all-time highs, which they saw in 21. So how can you look at these 2 charts? I would say like the momentum for Bitcoin is a lot less. That is clear. That is confirmed by RSI. But the momentum in altcoins is still strong if we purely look at this measurement. So yeah, altcoins is the better bet because they are still holding on to support. Another chart of the Bitcoin graph. This time I like to look at the MACD, which is a different kind of momentum indicator, which also shows when a cyclical move is coming, when one is ending. You can stack it on top of the RSI. Basically the same. You can see the halvings, and then below you see the same vertical lines. MACD pushes up. So the blue line goes above the red one. So the fast one goes above the average one. And then we have an uptrend and then it gets broken and that confirms a downtrend. And we see that every cycle, slightly before or around the halving, MACD turns positive. And then at the end of the cycle, we are looking at a monthly chart once more. At the end of the cycle, cyclical move, then we turn bearish. And that's about it. There is one occasion, like in 2019, when we saw a temporary rally and then a COVID crash. You can clearly see that we saw a move up and then a correction, and then we flipped back. So basically this whole move is broadcast as well. So I believe it's a very solid signal to get in or get out, because if you did, then you basically did not suffer losses in the Corona crash. We have seen another turnaround this cycle as well. Before the halving, we turned positive. We are hugging around that moving average line, the red line, but we are still above it. And I think that we may tag it and continue for a little longer. So we are still as well in a bull market when we look at MACD. And then another indicator which I like to use, there are like a lot of indicators, but let's just use the ones that have the highest hit rate of being successful as of now. There's people making stock to flow, all kinds of nonsense, but these indicators like the pi cycle has been exactly calling every top, every cycle so far. So I like to use it in this regard. We can see cycle tops. We also saw a top in July 21, the first time, as I mentioned earlier. So every cycle you see those two moving averages touching each other, and that means the cycle is over. And most often we also touch that custom red line, logarithmic growth line, which I diminished from what most people like to use to a more conservative, realistic kind of trend. which is also going to flatten out in the future and not going into infinite upside. And this cycle, we are still far away. So the pi cycle indicator basically says the same. There is still room for upside. As we have seen in 21, they almost touched, but they didn't touch exactly. So that trend may continue, and that would imply that the red line versus the green line will not touch once more, and there could be a small space. But what we do want to see here is that they are converging, that they are going for each other, and the closer they get, the closer we get to a cycle peak. So we are still far away, as you can see. And I assume, because we have seen higher highs recently, that the prior high we saw at the start of 25 is not the actual high, and we have yet room to move for this cycle, which is actually bullish. If we look at the MVRV score, which is another way of looking at markets. I reported about this a while back. Then you can clearly see the same. You have a downward trend, which is the red line, and then you have support, which is the green zone at the bottom. And we are not really touching that line just yet, as I showed you with the other indicators. There's still room to move. So there is a diminishing return. I am looking between the around 5, let's say, for an exit, but we are still around 2.5, which means we still have room to move. We are not in a danger zone. When we look at the Google Trends, which is a total different indicator, this clearly shows when retail is looking on Google. They are looking at altcoins, they are looking at Bitcoin specifically, and those are the two trend lines. The red line is Bitcoin and the blue line is altcoins, and you can clearly see they are not typing it in, they are not actively looking into cryptocurrency. If we watch Google Trends, the last 5 years, we clearly see like there are big spikes, and those spikes represent retail, like the stupid buyers, let's call them that, jumping into markets. And we haven't really seen that. We saw a surge earlier in 24, but that was a short one, and that's it. So we had the meme coin cycle, and we had the AI and the real world asset cycle at that point, becoming very hot topics, etc. Here earlier, we saw the same as well. But we did not see the big gains, the big craziness just yet. Overall interest remains low. And because in price cycles, we always saw higher numbers, I do believe that the likelihood is there for us to continue. So sorry if you have some background noise. My neighbors, they are renovating the whole house, so sometimes someone makes a noise. Looking at sentiment, these are all different kinds of sentiment indicators. Let's start at the left top. If we look at the funding rates in general, this is from 2 days ago, then you can see we are in uncertainty. We are near panic because we had a dip on Sunday, the 22nd. I'm recording this the 23rd. So we're even lower now. So yeah, sentiment is bearish. When we look at the coin market cap crypto index, we see the same. We are sitting at neutral, which after Sunday dips has gone lower as well. And then we have the general fear and greed index. And that is also pointing to greed, which is also now back near neutral. So all of these indicators went down in the past 24 hours. And basically shows, even if they are like this, that we are not heavily bullish. And yeah, let's take a look at the right side on the upper corner. I posted this chart on X before, and basically it clearly shows you what happens. We get a cyclical peak, then the red box is the bear market, the purple box is accumulation, Wyckoff accumulation. Then we see a reaccumulation, which is the yellow, and then you see the bull market, which is basically the green. And we have seen the same since the last cycle: bear market, Wyckoff accumulation, breakout, reaccumulation, which I posted about many times, another breakout, and we are now in the last part of the cycle, which they like to call parabolic blow off top. Sorry. And yeah, we are still going higher as we speak. We just made new all-time highs in the past couple of weeks. So, yeah, the cycle is still repeating. We are in the last phase of the cycle. That is clear. Sentiment is, however, not extremely greedy. And let's also take a look at the lower end of the chart, all the way below. You see crypto fear and greed index, which is a different representation of the ones you see on the left. Basically, whenever we go to the green, when we go to extreme greed, we often move to the opposite side of the spectrum. We move to extreme fear to wipe out short-term traders, leverage, whatever. So when we hit the greed, it takes a while for us to bottom, and then we see an average a bottom around 40 weeks or so. We saw that once more in 21. We saw a cyclical peak, and then we saw a reset, which sentiment flush basically. So we saw that many times, and basically what I'm hinting at is that we just saw that when we moved to 100,000 the first time. And then we spent a lot of time, roughly 16 weeks, going down until like the start of, yeah, let's say May or something like that, April, May, when we saw the local bottom, and then we rallied back higher. And currently we are not sitting in extreme greed just yet. We are trending up, but we could stay there for a couple of weeks if we see a cyclical peak at least, and we did not so far. So that basically also points that we are not at a peak right now. I do expect us to visit extreme greed and perhaps stay there for at least, let's say, 2-3 weeks, make a clear top, and then start flushing people. Sentiment-wise, we are safe. I think it looks really healthy. We are at all-time highs. We are seeing tariff fears, which are still present. We are seeing like the Iran attacks occurring last week, and we do not see a lot of movement. Yeah, we see some pullbacks, but nothing major. We're still in a Russia-Ukraine war. I mean, there's a lot of concern, but overall, crypto and basically Bitcoin is holding on strongly, so that's a good signal. Let's take a look at the dollar index, because I mentioned this for many, many years already on my X. And basically, whenever the dollar index moves down, we usually see crypto move up. So the right side, you see the total 3 market cap once more. And what happened since 2025 is we have been correcting, because there's a lot of fear, all the things that I said, we have been correcting. We have not seen our massive altcoin push up. On the contrary, we have seen one of the worst altcoin situations ever. And I've been in crypto since 2013 on a daily basis. So this has been one of the worst environments. So since the start of 2025, the dollar index really went lower with a massive move. It went from 110 below 100 and is potentially, after bouncing, going to move to at least the mid 90 area. And at best, depending how things evolve in the near future, we will even move to the 90s area. And a bearish dollar is bullish risk on assets. Risk on assets like stocks, but also crypto. And the higher risk spectrum of crypto, which is altcoins, that is even more influential there. So we have seen a pullback, but I do believe that this momentum will play out to the other side eventually. And that, as I said before, altcoins will move up to at least double what they are valued at today, or even higher. And let's take another look at how poorly altcoins are performing right now. If you see the cycle of 2017 and if you look at the cycle of 2021, then one thing is clear. If we divide the others market cap, so the market cap of all the smaller altcoins, let's say, and we divide it by Bitcoin, then we can see that we are at an all-time low for this cycle. And as you clearly notice, when we reach a low point, after that we see a run-up. So there's always this dynamic of altcoins versus Bitcoin and money flowing to riskier assets, chasing profits, whatever. We are not seeing that right now. The cycle played out in 2017. Prior to that, there were barely no altcoins, or at least there was no charting on TradingView back then. We only had a couple of websites reporting. But you can see 2017 we saw this cycle, 2021 we saw this cycle. I do not believe that we will see new highs. I mean, I'm not that optimistic about altcoins this cycle because of the restrictive conditions globally. But I do believe some kind of weakened cycle could play out. Let's put it like this is a left shoulder, this is the center, and we will see a right shoulder, perhaps moving around this area, but at least something, a right shoulder, and then probably, yeah, that's not that bullish for altcoins in the future, but there is a lot of dilution, so I would say then game over. Basically, chances are high that after this cycle, the crypto space is just gonna adapt further. There is a lot of room for altcoins to perform, and that is even more clear if you look at the Bitcoin dominance. Once more, 2017, we had a halving and then a big drop. 2020, another halving. 2021, a big drop. So far, halving. We are still in a clear uptrend. First things first, we want to break the uptrend line to the downside. And then I do believe that an altcoin season is coming. Do I believe that we will hit the blue line once more? No, because I think it will be very challenging to reach that level in the current cycle. I only believe that when this happens and we see a big liquidity injection with it, then I would say yes. Otherwise, I would say no. I would say that we are probably going to test the midline, which is around like this 52% level, that we drop towards that level and bounce perhaps. That's where I will be scaling out heavily, or I will review markets once more. I will make a video as well. But one thing is clear. When you look at this, there's actually two things. The first thing is that on average, when you have the halving and you have the altcoin cycle play out, which means that Bitcoin dominance drops as money flows into altcoins, and they lose dominance. I mean, Bitcoin loses dominance. Then on average, that cycle takes 20, 34 weeks, 33 weeks in 2020. And this cycle, we're already sitting at 53. So yeah, the cycle is different. We have had the worst sentiment in altcoins ever. We have had a much longer dominance cycle for Bitcoin. And I think that's due to the ETF and treasuries, adoption by companies, and Bitcoin is basically scaling into something different than prior cycles. I mean, everyone who was dreaming about Bitcoin getting big, that's currently happening. And so the cycle is different. But considering what is occurring, I do believe at worst case, we will bounce to 71% dominance. But either way, we are likely going to see a significant drop. If you look at these drops, yes, the sheer size of the drops is becoming less. First one is basically twice. The second one, let's assume that it's only half of that this time. So basically what I'm saying is around current levels, 65%, I would watch for a move until 52%, roughly something like that. But one thing is clear, altcoins are still going to outperform. When we look at momentum on the Bitcoin dominance, then we see the same. When we look at MACD, you can clearly see momentum shifting already since the whole uptrend. We see the same on RSI, and we saw that in prior cycles as well, that RSI making a lower high, which is called a divergence, and eventually that divergence plays out. We have seen a triple divergence so far, which is a very strong signal, and I do believe that eventually momentum will flip, and we will see an altcoin season. First altcoin season was 44 weeks, second one 20 weeks. I do believe same as the magnitude, altcoin season will be a lot shorter. It will be compressed and it will only be roughly 2 months, 2.5 months at most. So roughly looking at 10 weeks here, which will have all the gains in a very short time period, in a really surge up. People will start talking about like, you know, the dynamics of a super cycle, etc. But that will not be the case. I mean, it will be short and it will be big. And then the last chart that I want to show you is basically a comparison. Once more, at the left, you see Bitcoin. Then you see the total two, excluding Bitcoin. And then you see all the other altcoins. And you can clearly see Bitcoin is leading its cycle. It broke its all-time high. It made new highs. And then when we look at the altcoins without Bitcoin, they are testing the old highs. And when we look at all the rest, they haven't reached the highs almost, but not yet. So there is a lag in the cycle, which we see every single cycle. And I do think that cyclicals, yeah, they are going to be the same once again. So to sum it all up, what are my expectations? I said it before. I do think that there is a lot more headwind with crypto. There's a lot more risk in Bitcoin, etc. I do believe that the cyclical target will be around $120,000, $150,000 for Bitcoin. I do think that altcoins will see a move, but I do not think we will see a very crazy altcoin cycle. I also think that only new sectors, hyped narratives, hyped sectors, hyped coins that already done good this cycle, that they will do well once more. The others I do not see making big gains. So that's a general trend, but I do believe that we will see upside for altcoins because they have been so depressed for so long. So yeah, cycle is different. Normally at this stage, we would have seen a lot more performance and we did not. So that performance will catch up. It will be explosive. It will be short. Everyone will be caught off guard. It will suck people back in. And I do believe that, yeah, the cycle will repeat in that sense, but things are also going to be different. I also believe chances are high that this is a last good cycle for altcoins where you can see at least some decent profit. I do think that in the future, every cycle is getting harder. And I do think in the future, that altcoins are just too much diluted and much of the big industry will basically go to zero and only big utility projects will survive. So that's basically how I look at it. Right now, I'm fully exposed to altcoins. I do not own Bitcoin. I basically just hold altcoins. And I'm just, yeah, waiting for things to play out. I expect the third quarter to be positive. Look at my other video about equities. I do see continuation there. So I also see continuation for Bitcoin. There's still liquidity support generally. Macro conditions, they are not looking great, but they are not a disaster either. So things are shaping up for crypto to perform in Q3. I'm looking currently at like the end of September for at least a higher move generally. And otherwise, if we see a lot of chop this summer, then it will probably be around Q4 once again. And I will look for a peak roughly around November. Keep in mind, things can be negative. Things cannot perform. You only need those 10 weeks in total to see all your gains for the whole 4-year cycle. That is a reality. We saw that at the end of 2024, where basically everything went parabolic in 4-5 weeks time. So that was just to show you what can happen. And I do believe this will happen again. It will be violent. It will be short. It will suck people in. And that is when you have to exit. So if you have any questions, please post them below, like, subscribe, whatever you can do to support me. I really thank you for that if you managed to pull that off. So thank you once more and have a nice day and talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.